Morning Joe discussed what's been going on behind the scenes in regards to President Trump. And this stuff is so crazy that it even shocked me. So it's a little long here, but it's well worth the listen. Let's watch, and then we'll discuss the implications of this.
I'll just read a quote. This year, top White House staff members warned that the National Enquirer was planning to publish a negative article about us unless we begged the president to have the story spiked. We ignored their desperate pleas. What exactly happened there, to the extent you're comfortable talking about it?
Well, I mean, I'm comfortable talking. I mean, I think we have to talk about it now because it explains the relationship and his really strange obsession with this show, and in particular, his really disturbing obsession with Mika. We got a call that, hey, the National Enquirer is going to run a negative story against you guys, and it was, Donald is friends with, the president is friends with the guy that runs the National Enquirer. And they said, if you call the president up and you apologize for your coverage, then he will pick up the phone and basically spike the story. I had, I will just say, 3 people at the very top of the administration calling me. And the response was like, are you kidding me? I don't know what they have. Run a story? I'm not going to do it. The calls kept coming and kept coming, and they were like, call. You need to call. Please call. So, come on, Joe, just pick up the phone and call him. It's blackmail.
And let me explain what they were threatening. They were calling my children. They were calling close friends.
You're talking about the National Enquirer. No.
And they were pinning the story on my ex-husband, who would absolutely never do that. So I knew immediately it was a lie and that they had nothing. And these calls persisted for quite some time, and then Joe had the conversations that he had with the White House where they said, oh, this could go away.
So I just want to be very clear here.
Wow.
The National Enquirer is harassing your children, your daughters, who are teenagers.
Yeah. And it's,
and then Joe in turn is getting calls from the White House.
By the way, they're also, I was at Mika's house for a few minutes and came out, and there was a guy in a van that was staked out there watching. It was clear that he was from a tabloid, and he started asking questions. And then after all this started happening, that's when we started getting calls from the White House saying, if you call, you need to call the president. And
our response, talking to my ex-husband, talking to Joe, talking to my kids, was, screw it, let them run it. Just go ahead and run it.
By the way, they ended up running something, and they interviewed a guy who said, yeah, I seen him there for about a year. He comes in, he buys about, three 6-packs of beer a week here in my store. I've never bought a beer. You can check it out. I'll be Gary Hart here. Follow me around. I've never bought a beer in my life. From a convenience store, from a bar.
I wish it was,
Joe, what you just said is forget, I don't want to talk about tweets anymore. What you just said is one of the most frightening things I've ever heard.
Well, this is what we got.
Basically, that this story is going to run unless you grovel to the president, and then the president will kill the story.
But not just the story will run. We will stop we'll have the National Enquirer stop harassing your children if you grovel to the president of the United States.
And what makes it even worse for them is Donald Trump called me during the campaign and bragged about his friend who ran the National Enquirer. He said, and it'd always say, have you seen the Ben Carson story? Have you seen the Ben Carson story? Have you seen that story in the Enquirer? And then he would talk about it. Did they do the JFK story too? I don't know if they did the JFK story too, but there were all these stories that were planted in the National Enquirer for people that Donald Trump wanted to attack. And then he would talk about it on the campaign trail. So when we heard, he said, oh, so we've gone from campaign mode to now trying to attack us. And of course, go ahead. We were like...
The Ted Cruz JFK story was the National Enquirer. That his father was involved somehow.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not a fan of Joe Scarborough, but the level of detail on that story leads me to believe he's telling the truth. And that means Trump is even more loathsome than I thought. because what it shows is he's so petty and vindictive and wrapped up in personal issues that he really is intellectually on the maturity level of a high school bully. Like, think that's how he's spending his time. And then the thing about the Inquirer, too. Wow. So, in other words, one of Trump's close friends runs the Inquirer, and Trump just gets whatever stories he wants planted in the Inquirer. So, during the campaign, he made up stories about, one of them was Ted Cruz's dad assassinated JFK. And he mentioned that on the campaign trail, and Trump in his classic, I said it, but I didn't really say it style, so, he touches on it, and he was referencing that story. But the story was in the Inquirer, who's his friend runs it, who he probably just planted that story, and then he spoke about the story he planted. I mean, this is taking trolling to a level I thought unattainable. And then there was the Ben Carson, so there was a bunch of stories about Ben Carson, but one of them was just this weird story about how, and I think we covered it, I think I covered it, so I was duped by it, about how he, what was it, he left after the Iowa caucus, instead of going directly to New Hampshire, which he should have, he had to go home to get some clothes or something, and everybody was laughing at him, look at this fucking idiot, he's running for president, this is when it's crunch time, and you gotta campaign hard, and you're fucking home you forgot clothes? The fuck is that? That was just one of the stories. There were a few stories planted about Ben Carson, apparently. So, here's a guy who, he is a manipulator on an insane level. And then also on top of being a manipulator, because he plants the stories, then he talks about the stories he plants, he's just a liar. He's doing this, he's pulling the fucking puppet strings behind the scenes, and then he acts like he's a straight shooter, what, me? No, Joe, look, I'm just trying to do you a favor, Joe. I'm just trying to get the story that's negative about you and Mika killed from the National Enquirer, and I'd love to get that story killed, but first you gotta come kiss my fucking ring. And kiss my feet. And tell me how great I am. And tell me how tremendous I am. And apologize for how unfairly you've treated me. Guys, this is the most powerful man on earth. And this is how he's acting. This is the most powerful man on earth. I don't even want the most powerful man on earth to give a shit about personal issues on any level. I want that person to be totally zoned in on policy and actually helping regular people and, pushing for things that make sense. Medicare for all, free college, living wage, end the wars. Here we have a guy, he's just utterly empty and vacuous. There's nothing there. There's no there, there's no core there. And he's outsourcing all the policy to, I don't know, the fuck, economic policy, Goldman Sachs, I got you guys in my administration, you do that. Military, where's Mattis? Mattis, you do that. What are we talking about here? Tremendous, believe me. Now me, I'm gonna go ahead and, start feuds with cable news hosts, which, by the way, reports are he watches up to 6 hours a day of cable news. Wow. He's got all that time? I'm a fucking YouTube host. I don't have that time. I don't have anywhere near that amount of time. So he's starting beef with cable news hosts and then trying to get stories planted about them and fucking blackmailing them and I can get it killed, but you just gotta come kiss my ring. And the stories are made up. There's just made up stories. He's a shameless liar and a scumbag and a cretin. He really is. I hate making character arguments he's unfit. He doesn't have the character to be in office. Because what does that even mean? What are you saying? Well, Trump actually doesn't have the character to be in office. He just doesn't. This guy is just off the fucking reservation. He's just gone. He's 71 years old. This is a 71-year-old man. This is how he acts. Everybody I know wasn't this petty and vindictive when they were in high school, when people are the most petty and vindictive. But jeez, man, oh my goodness. Wow. This is how he spends his time. And the irony, final point, the irony. What does this guy do anytime he sees a story he doesn't like? Fake news, that's fake news, fake news. You just learned right now. whenever he screams fake news, it's because it's projection. He's the one that's guilty of pushing fake news quite directly. So he does fake news all the time. So anytime you see something that's slightly negative about him, it's projection. Oh, fake news, fake news. They just plant the negative stories about me because they're liars and they're unscrupulous. Well, actually, you're a liar and you're unscrupulous and you plant fake stories about people. So guilty conscience and it leaks out. Whatever he accuses other people of doing, he's usually doing.